What's up, riders? It's Jim from Caledonia Keys. So it's near the end of the season and about time to put my Triumph America to bed for the winter, barring a few nice days when we can still get out if we're lucky. Anyway, end of season's a good time to do your oil changes. So you're going to need motorcycle oil. Make sure it's motorcycle oil and check your owner's manual to let you know what type it is. You're going to want an oil filter and a crush washer. Now, in addition to that, you're going to need something like a bike lift, so you can raise the bike up, and something, of course, that you can catch and dispose of your used oil. A funnel also will come in handy when we're pouring in the new stuff. So let's get to it. So we already had the bike out for a run to get the oil warmed up, and we're just putting the bike lift underneath. So the trick is getting it underneath the bars without messing with the kickstand. So do that and raise the bike up. So once you've got the bike up, just to show you here, the oil plug is actually on the front. Right there. Now before we go and loosen that, we're going to want to make sure that we get the oil cap off so that we can actually refill the bike, because it would really suck to drain the bike and then find out that we can't get new oil in it. Now, of course, in this case, Triumph has decided to make this fancy oil cap that doesn't take any standard tool. So my buddy Ken here has a solution. All right, so here's the solution. And no, we're not going to beat on the oil cap. My buddy Ken happened to notice that the back, the claw here, is just about the right size to fit in the slot, nice and snug, so we can loosen it off. So like I said, you want to make sure that you can get this off before you can go draining any oil, because if you drain the oil and you can't refill it, well, you're kind of in a bind. All right, before we go too far, you want to make sure that you put your oil pan underneath to catch any of the old oil. Then we're gonna, in this case, use a wrench where we don't have a lot of room here, and loosen that off. There we go. Once it's loose, don't want to drop it in the oil pan. Not that we can't get it after, but remember, lefty loosey. And there we go. Isn't that beautiful? Then we're just going to let that drain. All right, so you'll notice that when we have the drain plug here, there's also a crush washer. Now, probably 9 times out of 10, you can reuse it, but for me, it's worth spending $3 to get a new one. So we're just going to put the oil drain plug in with our new crush washer and tighten it up before we lower the bike and take off the oil filter. All right. So I'm just gonna put in the drain plug finger tight for starters. All right, once I got it finger tight, I'm gonna take the wrench, give it somewhere between 1/4 to a 1/2 turn. There are torque settings, but that should do it. Okay, so now we're going to take the oil filter off so we can change that. The first thing we'll do is we'll see if we can get it off by hand, but if you can't get it off by just turning it, then you may need an oil filter wrench, which is this right here. There is also another kind of oil filter wrench I don't have in front of me. You can ask about it at the bike shop. It actually fits onto the filter to the bottom of it and gives it a turn, but we're gonna give it a shot by hand first. Okay, so we're just gonna give it a turn, and we gotta think we're turning. There we go. Now, don't forget to make sure you've got your oil pan underneath, because you are gonna get some drippage here. And also, if you don't like getting oil on your hands, and you're smarter than I am, you probably put on some gloves. If you're not, you're gonna want to wipe up. Okay, so now we're gonna put the new filter on. And for starters, we're gonna want to make sure that we wet the seal on the new filter. So I'm gonna use new oil. I've seen some people use the old stuff, but we got plenty. On my finger, wet it all the way around. And we should be good to go. Now, some people have some mixed opinions on this next step. You can add a little bit of oil to your oil filter, because you see you've got some, it's just air in there. And if you fill it a little bit with oil, then it's a little bit less for the pump to fill it up for the first time. Now, I've been told it doesn't really matter, but it doesn't really hurt either. Okay, so now we're all set to screw on the new oil filter. All right, so you don't really need it terribly tight. Basically get it tight and give it a quarter turn, and it should be on nice and firm. Okay, one of the hazards of doing your oil change outside, we're getting a little bit of rain, but it's just light, so we'll live with it. Anyway, so you're gonna need a funnel to ideally fill up your bike with new oil. We already had loosened off the cap before we did the drain plug, because we want to make sure that we don't get into trouble. Nothing like draining that oil and not being able to replace it. So your owner's manual should tell you exactly the oil you need, and ideally the amount. So for the Triumph America, we're using the Motul 10W40. It's semi-synthetic. You can ask them at the bike shop if you want to use full synthetic. And the answer I've got is if you want to waste your money. Anyway, so this should take anywhere from 3.3 to 3.8 liters. I think it said in the manual. We got 4 liters. So we're just gonna fill it mostly, and then we're gonna check the oil level, and we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so I put in most of the 4 liters, and then I'm gonna look at the sight glass. And if you got a buddy that can, in this case, lift the bike up, and we're just gonna check and see where the oil level is. And you can see the oil level is right where it needs to be. So we know we're good. Okay, so final step, we're just gonna put the oil cap back on. Finger tight. And then use the handy dandy tool. Just give it that little extra. And we're good to go. Okay, so now that we've filled it with oil, the last thing the owner's manual tells me to do is to start the bike and just let it idle for 30 seconds. And if you see an low oil pressure light, well, then we got something to figure out, but haven't had that happen yet. So just start it up and let it idle. So that in a nutshell is how you do your oil change and get things ready for the fall. It's not to say that I'm not going to take it out if I get a warm day. Hopefully I'm going to be lucky this year. I actually got out on January 1st and got to go for a ride. So this winter is supposed to be worse, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, till next time, ride on.